everybody, and welcome to the next edition of Moons and Mythos. This is episode number 12, and so we are now 1 year into doing this. So happy birthday, Kelley. Good to be with you again. We did kind of joke that we would have a special birthday on the 13th moon because it's much more witchy, right?
Well, yes, I like that.
So anyway, today's show is, as always, about the upcoming monthly moon cycles. And this show, we're going to be looking at the new moon on July the 17th, which is at 24 degrees of Cancer. And then we're going to be looking at the full moon at 9 degrees of Aquarius, which will be on August the 1st. Now, definitely been sensing the shifts in energies over the last couple of months. I wouldn't say that things have necessarily completely eased up, but I am feeling that things have got a little lighter over the last, well, maybe the last week or so, actually. But I'm wondering, Kelley, what have you got in store for us today? And what are the planetary cycles going to show us about what we can expect energetically, maybe in our lives over the next 4 weeks?
Yeah, well, I have some charts to show you, but I just want to say, first of all, we've been in this long-term, dynamic with Pluto going back and forth in signs, and also how Maya squaring Pluto going back and forth. And we're still in that shifting of the tides energy. So that is a big feature of this moon cycle. And so you ready to look at some charts?
As always, let's do it.
Okay.
It does really feel, doesn't it, Kelley, like it's a shifting of the tides. I mean, always when there's
does.
Going to be a transition.
Yes, it really does.
And, to preface, I guess, what we're going to talk about today, the Pluto squaring the nodes is still very much in full effect. We're now only 6 days away from the node shifting. Feels like, I don't know what to make of this one. And maybe just before we get into this, you can tell us what you feel about the node shifting. Because on the one hand, there's a bit of me that's relieved that we're going to be out of the last final degrees of the South Node in Scorpio, because it's been a little challenging. But then I'm thinking North Node in Aries could be kind of fiery. There's lots of unrest in the world. And I'd like to think the higher note of Aries is going to be about the expression, the higher expression of the individual. But if people are not in their higher notes, then how do you see that playing out, Kelley? Do you have a view on the node shifting?
Well, one thing, that starts within this lunar cycle is Venus goes retrograde.
Right.
At 28 of Leo. So she's going to be working really nicely with that North Node in Aries. And so to some extent, it depends on how we are processing this rather unusually deep dive into the Venus retrograde cycle. And we'll talk a little bit about it today, but we're going to do a special thing about it because it's so special.
Right. And so I'm just going to take the opportunity to plug a couple of things. So we've just launched at QPH the Quest to the Quantum Heart, which is going to be a special 3-week journey starting on the 22nd of July, which is when Venus enters the retro process. But it's also Magdalene Day. And so this is very much about the energy of the heart, but also very much, I think, the energy of the goddess and the sacred feminine is going to be at work. So it's a very magical process. And as always, me and you like to team up and do something around these immersions and quests. And so we're going to do a special piece to preface that journey about the Venus retrograde process. So I'm super excited about that, Kelley.
I love talking about Venus because her cycle is so extraordinary, so aesthetic. And this particular Venus retrograde, as we see, I made it pink for the heart, is conjuncting the Black Moon Lilith on and off. So this makes it deeper. This brings it into the Magdalene energy. This is suggesting that deep spiritual energy, like more going deeper into the heart to connect with the divine in a fuller, richer way, because it's time and because, that so many signals are saying that. So that this is a special part of this particular Luna cycle. And it starts in Cancer, which is already the Divine Mother sign at one of its highest expressions. And it's at almost 25 of Cancer. So this is the new moon energy, and it plugs right into the dynamic with the nodes at 0, on this new moon, so ready to change sign. And this is like the two nodes, true nodes, they have a slight difference sometimes, the true node and the mean node. The similar thing with the Black Moon Lilith, that it has two different ways of measuring it, true and mean, but the difference can be quite larger. Right. But this new moon fits into the fourth corner of what would otherwise be what we call a T-square, with the nodes and Haumea squaring Pluto, squaring Eris. Now, I think when we talk about Eris, there's an astrologer, Heather Ensworth, who talks about Eris Xena. And I think she's got the right idea, because it was originally nicknamed Xena. And I think there is a very strong energy of that healing warrior princess, of that TV show with this energy. Eris takes it to a different mythology. It also takes it into more of a discordant activist accent, but it's really a beautiful amalgam of those two archetypes, I think, that are not dissimilar. So we've got this three-cornered, it's like a table with three legs. And we've had that on and off all, along this dance that we've been in with this for months now, and the Haumea Pluto part even longer. And then this new moon is bringing that fourth leg in. And so it's happening. It's like more steady, it's more stable, it's more integrated. It is also the growth point, because Cancer is about growth. Cancer sometimes doesn't like change. It's like, is it going to be okay? Because it's about safety and security. But safety and security is an inner experience, which is part of what Venus in retrograde in Leo is going to help us recognize even more richly and fully. But this is not time to hesitate. Pluto's right there saying, okay, we're going to cut the cord with the past and with old habits that are holding you back and getting in the way. And, we've also, in the last couple of months talked about Orcus, that keeper of O's, the maker and breaker of O's, and how we've got to cut the cord, with some of these old bindings that are holding us back and keeping us in too small a place and in ourselves. In terms of some of these old habits that rule us. We need vigilance. We need to be observing ourselves, and, any old habits, that aren't good for you. How can you replace that with something more beneficial, more truly comforting, and, kind of nurturing? So that's part of the Cancer energy.
So just a couple of things I want to say there. So we didn't mark it on the map, but we did, or the chart, but we did talk about it beforehand. So Orcus is around 13, 14 degrees of Virgo, if you want to see how it's affecting your own chart. So I think that's really interesting. And also, I just realized that Venus is at 28 degrees of Leo, and Regulus, the royal star, is 29 degrees of Leo, right? So I think by the time we get to the 22nd of July, that Venus will be on 29 degrees.
Well, the thing is, like, Venus was at 29, a couple decades ago, or actually, I should say, it was in 2012 that Regulus actually moved into. I got to think about this.
Yeah, because the fixed stars do actually shift a little bit, don't they? I mean, not a huge amount, but they do shift from one to a few degrees, and that can be enough to shift it into a different sign. So it's
so Virgo into Virgo.
So Regulus is now in Virgo. I mean.
Well, as of 2012, that was the idea. I have to rethink this, because do the fixed stars move backwards through the zodiac? So I have to rethink this. This is like so fun. Once in a while, something comes up and it's like, oh, I need to do a little more research on this. But in any case, it's very cuspy, and the Venus goes retrograde right under that light of that star. It's close enough in any case. And, Venus and Mars were really close before Venus started really slowing down. And they were also on the last full moon, pretty close to that, star of Regulus. So that is a very significant, aspect of this star, that is a star of sovereignty, a star of heart-centeredness and of royal, heritage. And we each have that in our own soul energy. And the Black Moon Lilith is really about the core of the soul. And with Venus, this is like divine feminine, and under that star energy, this is very high creative sovereignty. And it's working very well with Haumea, that is the goddess of childbirth. And there's something about that that's, got to come from the heart and has to also be coming from that passion and core intensity. And that's going to be more of the flavor when Haumea moves back into Scorpio. So this is, there's such shifting, changing energy. And this is very much, a kind of tidal shift, considering we have the Cancer new moon and it's squaring the nodes. And over right after the moon, right after the new moon clicks in, the moon is going to go right into Leo, and the sun will, 5 days later. So
right.
We're moving more.
This is why I brought this up, because obviously, we're talking about the heart, but we're also talking about the royal sovereign heart, which, as we have discussed before last year, and also with our friend Dandelion, the whole connection between Dandelion and the royal cats and the Sphinx and the feline energy and all of this. And so it just seems perfect to me, because I wasn't aware of this until I was looking at the charts. Like, oh wow, it looks like the Venus retro heart process is going to start pretty much conjuncting the royal star, Regulus. So
yes, I mean, how many layers is that? There's the royal star, there's the Feast of Magdalene, there's the Black Moon Lilith. It's the heart. It's connecting the heart and the soul at a much more deep and intimate level. And so we've got to be vigilant about this. We need to really find that core area from which we're expressing the heart energy. And we're going to be busted if we're coming from our superficial ego self, which sometimes the sign Leo wrestles with a bit. And it's going to be more obvious who's coming from that level and who's not.
Right. Yeah, this is an important time, right? I think, to be in alignment with ourselves, to be in alignment with our hearts.
Absolutely.
It's also interesting. We did a live call earlier today to our Rainbow Warriors group on quantum plant healing. We were just sharing the information about the new quest for the quantum heart. And one of our tribe members said, hey, it's really interesting, but quite a few groups I'm connected to are all suddenly doing stuff to do with the heart. Yeah. So I think this is really encouraging. It means that there's a collective impulse now. And I think that is largely due to the freeing up of a lot of energy over the last few weeks. I think that we've all been through something profound, and maybe some of us are more aware of it than others. But for sure, speaking from my own experience, I've definitely felt that something has lifted from the planet that maybe is now going to give us more safety to fully open our hearts. We were talking about this beforehand, right?
That's beautiful. And that's so much a part of the nature of Cancer, that safety. And it's not the old security blankets. It's the power it's claiming our power there. That is what gives us sovereignty. That's what gives us. So there's that Pluto opposite this moon. Cut the cords with those old habits, those old, kind of superficial comfort levels that don't get to the core issue and come from a really true and deep place. We are healing our hearts in part. And that is in part because Chiron is going to be in a really positive alignment 3 times with Venus as she's in her retrograde circle. And also she'll be squaring Uranus also 3 times. So that one of those has already happened. So there's so much extraordinary energy around this Venus retrograde. So going back to the level of safety and comfort of knowing that the universe has our back, we can at least open the back of the heart chakra and feel that support of whatever our guides, our angels, we can feel that and let it through and lean into it, and then feel more confident about expressing ourselves. So, we're talking about that star Regulus, the star of heart, the star of courage of heart, the star of leadership, and look at the Sabian symbol for this new moon.
Ah,
A leader of men wrapped in an invisible cloak of power.
wow.
There's a little bit of wizardry in there for me, but it's also like part of the Pluto dynamic, that certain things are going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing yet. And also about going into our own hidden arena and finding that cloak of power, that what's his name, Harry Potter could wear.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a leader of men wrapped in an invisible cloak of power. I mean, I think there is a really interesting dynamic that we're going to move into now, which is about power. And certainly after we are leaving the South Node in Scorpio, which is, I think, largely about the misuse of power and abuse of power, power over others, particularly with money, many things, right? It's the, that is the lower notes of Scorpio. And so a leader of men wrapped in an invisible cloak of power speaks of us stepping up into our own power and not necessarily
Exactly.
being something that we have to exert over other people. It's like it's an inwards process. I now claim sovereignty over my own space. How many people on the planet have been able to say that, Kelley, in the last 2,000 years, that they have absolute sovereignty over their own body and their own energetic space? I don't think, maybe a few lamas up in the mountains of Tibet managed to break free, but I feel like that this is a ubiquitous story that is humanity now getting its emancipation by realizing that we can be sovereign beings. And this is where the AUKUS piece comes in, because we no longer consent to other beings, without naming them, abusing and manipulating and experimenting on us in the background. Particularly, I think, in childhood, that goes on a lot. So this is the ending of lots of karmic contracts, all of which maybe have served us. I mean, I'm a great believer in seeing the good in everything, or trying to, and understanding, well, some of these villains, these bad guys, whoever did all of these things, it was just a necessary process for us to experience certain lower frequency emotions so that we can balance out the higher ones in the game of duality. And in the end, it's just a game. Duality is a game. And the more we can go to that eagle's perch of the ascended Scorpio energy and just survey everything that's going on and survey ourselves and how we're doing things, we can see more easily where are the imbalances.
Grounded with the Taurus North Node, we have to be really grounded and stable. Taurus and Cancer have a lot in common. They both like stability and security. And we need to go to a new place within ourselves to find that. Nothing outside can give us what we're looking for there. We're like nesting and resting in ourselves in this Cancer new moon.
And the other thing I just want to allude to with that Sabian symbol, as you all know, is that we're rapidly approaching the end of the Mayan year.
Yes.
The Dolkin count. And so the day out of time is on 25th, I believe, of July. And so the new one that starts is the overtone of the White Wizard. So it speaks to me very much of the next period of time being about magic and wizardry, but in a good way that's of the manifestation variety from the higher self through the heart.
Yes, and that embodiment of that, in our own energy, we're expressing something that's coming through us from, as high a realm as we can get, which is where we're heading. So also, Leo, Venus retrograde in Leo with the Black Moon especially is also like really pointing out leadership and potential changes in leadership. And, since Venus is, the goddess of love, I think this certainly empowers women, but not just women. It's also the feminine qualities and values in men. So, we may see some women step up, but it's the quality of that leadership and the heart base of that leadership that is more important than, whether it's expressed and embodied by a man or a woman.
Yeah, it feels very much that this is a process about how we handle power, really. And, it's interesting. On another track, we've been working with the stellar nations, and one of the stellar nations is the winged lions. And that's all about power and leadership. And of course, Regulus is one of the winged lion star constellations in the stellar nations material. So the energy is very much there about power. And we can see now, if we've been watching the theatre show, who has been misusing power, how they've been abusing us with that power and the world in general. And now we can only be very, very close to the end of many things. Anyone who's watching, particularly on this side of the pond, the news, we can see the disclosures, even the situation over in Eastern Europe feels like it's very much coming to an end of its process. And I think that as the nodes shift, something tells me that that is going to free up some of that energy around all of those situations, which have been sort of lingering for a while. And people who've been misusing their power, who are in positions of power, I think are now going to come to the end of that cycle. And maybe when the nodes shift and the North Node is in Aries, then it's going to be about how do I, the individual, handle my power, excuse me, and use it in the world.
Yes, that's a really good point. And we do need to take responsibility for, how we're handling that, how our own relationship with ourselves, which is what Venus pulls us into, come back, sometimes stepping back from relationship to enrich and deepen the most important relationship, which is that with ourselves, and reconnect our heart and soul in a fuller way. So that is so much a part of this moon cycle. And I think that this also very important aspect with the new moon here is that it's trine Neptune fairly closely. So there is even more spiritual influence and the compassion and kindness and all of those beautiful qualities that, we need to give to ourselves as well as everyone else, and that's it. It's not, Leo is often considered a selfish sign, and so is Aries, the fire sign. Is like me first. I've got to come back in myself and be myself, capital S self. And it doesn't mean that we're putting ourselves over. It's like we're attending to ourselves first, and the more deeply we can love ourselves, the more fully and deeply we can love others. So that's but then the compassion and the kindness again that are necessary to foster our growth at this point. Cancer really needs a lot of tenderness and caring and nurturing, and that's why I'm thinking about the resting and the nesting.
Resting and the nesting, right? I like that. Yeah, I mean, lots of things to think about with all of this, but when it comes back to ourselves, it's a balance. I've said before, sometimes when we're in the world of healing or we're in the spiritual world, many of us are in service with being healing skilled, with astrology, sharing our gifts with the world. But there is a point where we end up being in service to servitude. And I have said this before in other calls, and I think that it's worth
you're bringing it right up, Davyd. You're going right into the Saturn Mars opposition here,
right?
In Pisces and Virgo.
Yeah.
Pisces and Virgo, both signs of service. Virgo in a more practical way, and Pisces in a more kind of spiritual or prayerful way. And this is the job right now with Saturn in Pisces, is to not be the victim, not overdo things, not, take on other people's stuff. This is like, get really clear about what's working and what's not. And your body, with that Mars in Virgo, your body is going to let you know, if you're letting in too much of other people's energy, and you're not squeezing out that sponge that takes out so much, takes in so much, that's easy to do. So Mars in Virgo now is wants us to focus our energy. There's Saturn, which is focus, and Mars in Virgo on the most important things. What are your priorities in any day, in any moment, really? But definitely listen to your hopefully more embodied physicality that's tuning into earth energy, and let nature guide you, and let your body is part of nature. It has this intelligence in every cell in the body. So listen to it and do what it says, eat what it says, tend to the priorities, and see how you can, if necessary, shift your schedule. Don't come at your workaday world with stress, get as much rest as possible, and give yourself extra time. Also, find that you deserve that. You need that to attend to yourself. So
right. I think this is a really interesting choice point for many of us, and maybe even myself included, really, which is like, I guess many of us came into this world with karma and dharma work to do, and that we do that work. But sometimes I've seen it with myself and others, is that can lead over into being in service to servitude. It's sort of so caught up in the idea that I'm here to be in service that everything else is at the expense of that. And that's not good for the individual. And I think this is what we're being asked to look at. It's like, we're not saying don't be in service, don't do healing work, don't do don't not do those things, but find the balance. And it's like,
balance, yes.
Balance, right?
They're going into Libra Aries. We need that balance.
Balance, right?
Yes,
and
that is one of the ways in which the nodal shift is really going to change the tone or the theme. Yeah.
And I think one of the places that has often not felt safe to open the heart is because of the presence of narcissistic energy in the world that would perhaps seek to maybe get us in our heart space. And so what I see now is that perhaps many people who've done healing work over the years have needed validation about themselves by giving of themselves to others. And I think that that's not a good way to do things, but it's a pattern I've seen many times with healers over the years. And I think that that's part of the situation that needs to be kind of just altered a little bit. It doesn't have to say, don't do healing work anymore, don't not help people. No, it's just about a rebalancing and a fine tuning, getting your daily life.
Yeah, that one of the negative sides of Libra is the tendency to people please or accommodate other people. And Aries is saying, I can't do that. I just can't get out of balance like that. It's finding that true balance. Yeah.
Well, this is where the unconditional love piece comes in. So you do things because you want to, not because you feel obligated or because you're in service to servitude or because it validates you. You do it because you want to. And I think that that's the big shift that we're going to have, because I feel like our whole society in the West has been very much top down. You do what we say, etc., etc. And somehow even, within the sort of liberal societies of the West, we actually have had no freedom at all. I was joking with an old friend of mine who's a politics journalist, and we were just saying, when we used to sit in class together doing our A levels, we were like, back then we were just like, so has any politician made a decision that has benefited either of us since we were 15? No. And so I'm just like, something's wrong in the world when all of the people that we elect end up doing things that we haven't asked them to do, and then expect us to put up with it. And we do, and we keep putting up with it, and we keep going through the same process and wondering why we keep coming out with the same results, which is that the politicians always do what they want to do and make money, and somehow we just have to put up and shut up, which again is, I think, South Node in Scorpio, other people's money. You're taking our money and giving it to situations and campaigns and wars that we haven't agreed to. Right. And I don't remember voting for you on that. So I think this is all part of the same piece. And I'm just bringing in the politics briefly, because it's like we have to choose now to do things differently. How do we
do have to choose? And it starts on a spiritual level.
And at the personal level.
Yes. And that balancing, and that there is a shift here going on. And we can't, it's like, a line I heard sometimes is like, oh, you should get the shot because, it's going to help other people. It's going to make other people feel safe. And it's like, that's not my job. My choice is to keep me feeling safe, to take care of myself. And, that is I think a dangerous undertone to some of also what we've been, kind of strong-armed, into a lot of time. So this new balancing, this new, even conversations, even that the choice point is here. So we have this beautiful Venus retrograde, which rules Libra, to help us become more centered, more heart-centered. It's not about giving in. It's not about giving too much, which Cancer tends to do, actually. And here's Pluto over here saying, okay, enough is enough. You've got to come back and feed yourself. So anyway, a lot of these themes echo each other, on the way here.
And also, maybe just as a final point, I want to ask you about this. So Neptune in Pisces, to me, speaks very much of a lot of the illusion and delusion that we've seen over the last few years, particularly with medications and so on and so forth, so as it, and I mean, I don't know how quickly Neptune moves. So this is why I'm asking, because there's a 27 degrees of Pisces, and I'm wondering, once Neptune's moved out of Pisces, is that going to be the end of that sort of murkiness of all of that energy that Neptune in Pisces offers up, or what do you think?
Well, if it depends on how many people wake up, but Neptune starts into Aries as soon as it's at 2956 Aries next summer.
Interesting.
So it's right on the cusp, and it's going to start into Aries in January of 2026. And it has a transition like Pluto is having now. But I also want to make a comment that I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right, that Neptune at 27 degrees Pisces is opposite the Neptune of the United States at 27 Virgo.
Wow, okay. I don't know that one, so that would have to be confirmed, but for sure. I mean, I think that's what's interesting when we look at the astrology of the US and when we're on this side of the pond, and we can see so many big changes, so much disclosure, many things that many of us have known for years, but then sort of peer across the pond to the other side, and it's quite a different story, although I do sense that it's changing actually this week with many of the big meetings going on, and it seems that many of the European nations are getting cold feet about some of the bigger situations that they've got pulled into, and I think it's very interesting to see which countries are still pushing the point about the situation.
Well, what I was saying about this Venus retrograde and potential change of leadership and values is really to the point as well. Can I show you now a graphic of the Venus movement?
Of course, and just on that final point, I mean, just this week the Dutch government collapsed amid
and France is coming. So anyway, as far as I've heard, I don't know. You know, it's hard to know what to believe, and that's a Neptune factor too, right?
Right, and maybe just before we go on to this beautiful picture, just want to pick up on that point too, is that, you know, Neptune is about the self maybe being deluded, and maybe now we're going to have the opportunity to have more 360 vision on what's really going on, with less of the illusion, less of the propaganda, less of the overlays, and maybe for the first time humanity for a long, long time, maybe ever, we'll get to see the world the way that it truly is, and the way that perhaps in our hearts we truly want it to be.
Yes, and that's part of visualizing what it is we want to be creating and how we want to be living. Yeah. You know, Neptune is like the collective dream. What are your dream? What are you dreaming? Some people are in nightmare, you know, and life is but a dream. You know, that's a spiritual perspective that has a reality in the Maya of illusion. That also Venus can help us get a little clear on. Where are we deluding ourselves? Where do we not want to, where are we not seeing ourselves clearly?
Right. Maybe we've been living in the dreams of people like Mr. Gates and Mr. Fauci for the last 3 years. This is quite definitely their horror dream and not mine. So who knows? But anyway, moving on from those nefarious characters, we've got a beautiful picture here, which looks very colorful. And perhaps you could explain to me and our audience, Kelley, what we're looking at.
So this is the Venus star, the pentangle that Venus goes retrograde 5 times in 8 years, repeating this star, drawing the star every 8 years in these 5 places in the zodiac. 2 days earlier, that means 2 degrees earlier in the zodiac. So basically, this pentangle holds for quite a while. And interestingly enough, we have the last, let's see, there is a Venus star point that's at the very, very end, very cusp of Libra and Scorpio. But that's you know, where Haumea is now, where the nodes are now. So that's also suggesting a kind of shift in the energy. But this is the one we're going to be experiencing now, this Venus going retrograde in Leo. So this is it's completely in Leo. You know, there's it's about 40 days and 40 nights that Venus is retrograde. And she describes a circle around these Venus star points, which are showing where Venus aligns with the sun, which she will be doing on August 13th at 21 Leo, with the black moon so close that it's like, wow, you know, there's so many special things about this particular Venus retrograde. But the main thing is, you know, we're being called into our hearts, our emotional intelligence, out of our heads into our hearts, and be experiencing life that way, letting that intelligence of Venus guide us to satisfaction and happiness and love and beauty and abundance, this is all Venus. This is her area. So these are the 5 points, and they keep repeating over and over. So the last one of these was in 2015, and I'll be sharing more details about this particular Venus pentangle and this particular Venus in retrograde in Leo, when we do that special presentation.
Wow. And of course, the pentangle is also a magical symbol. So we're talking about the magic of the heart, the magic of manifestation.
Magic.
Right.
Yes. And while the moon is waxing, Venus goes retrograde, as you said, on the 22nd of July, which is not very far after that new moon. So that this Venus retrograde is very, very embedded in this particular lunation, and is retrograde by the time we get, of course, to the full moon. And here we see Venus retrograde.
Okay. I just want to, sorry, Kelley, I'm just going to interrupt. I just want to allude to something. So, of course, when St. John went into the desert, he did his 40-day vision quest, and 40 days is often known as a period for a vision quest. And I'm wondering whether he did a 40-day vision quest on a Venus retro. Maybe he was doing a journey into his heart. Who knows?
I've often thought of that, and actually, I use that phrase because of that, relationship and that special event. But it's usually more like 42 days. But it's still, I think it really resonates. I think it really is, meaningful. And I'm glad you picked up on that.
Cool. So, okay, now we've got the full moon.
Full moon in Leo. Yeah. We have so much Leo going on. So it's at 9 degrees of Leo, or 10 if we're using Sabian symbols. And this is a beauty. Early morning dew salutes the sunlight. It sounds a little bit like Salacia, the mermaid who makes the sunlight sparkle on the sea. And yeah, I think she's right around 9 Aries. So she's glittering with this sun sign here. And we see it, there is black moon right there. This is the true black moon, and Venus also. The sun is moving right into that August 13th alignment with Venus, making the Venus star and initiating a new Venus cycle. And then we have the full moon at 9:10 Sabian of Aquarius. And that is going back to the man with the invisible cloak. A man who had for a time become the embodiment of an ideal is made to realize that as a person, he is not this ideal. So that goes to,
let me read that one again. A man who had for a time become the embodiment of an ideal is made to realize that as a person, he is not this ideal. So I can read that a couple of ways.
With that. But this goes back to leadership, and who is a true leader and who is a fake leader. And that goes back to yourself too. Again, are you expressing and showing up in the world through your ego or through that heart-centered self? So we can take this on a lot of levels, but it's interesting, based on the degree of the new moon, that, there is this invisibility that we are working within ourselves at the moment to consider, what does leadership mean? And are we giving the power to someone who is a mere human? And that's why we are equal to that. We have that sovereignty as well. But this can also be like false idols, that may be exposed, or, the potential change of leadership that I was mentioning with Venus retrograde in Leo. So there's to be some exposure here.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's been watching this show for the last year, or indeed any of the other podcasts, particularly Web of Weird, will know that some of us have this opinion anyway about quite a few leaders in the world. So I think that the time for change of leader is definitely here. But I think a change of attitude towards leadership and how we come to arrive at our leaders. I mean, for sure, having democracy, apparently, in my opinion, has not really led to that outcome that the democratic process should lead to, which is that we elect people who then answer to us as our representatives. That's the theory. I've never yet seen it really play out, certainly not in the UK. So I think that maybe, you know, what I've enjoyed being this side, Kelley, and you'll appreciate this, is the cameras that have been inside, particularly Congress in the US, and they've been filming all of the votes. And, you know, for the first time, what we're seeing is all of the dirty deals that get done, the sidling up, the backhanders, the whispering in the ear. And so I think it's a really, really good step to start bringing in transparency, so that when we can see the people that we voted for as our representatives are actually being mandated by us to go into power and do what we ask them to do, not say, yeah, thanks very much, I'll see you later, we're going to raise the tax rates, we're going to raise the interest rates, and you're going to pay for my happy 4 years as a politician, which is generally what I've seen with most politicians.
And in many countries, we're seeing an expression of true leadership, you know, in Congress, you know, that man in who came out, you know, as a leader in England, some of the European leadership, you know, I'm not too up to date on all of that, but, you know, that's part of this. And it's, you know, it can have a bit of a disillusioning thing, but it's more about claiming that within ourselves that nobody can, you know, like we're projecting on people, we're projecting on our leaders, and that you know, so the true leader gives that power back to the people.
Well, that's the idea of real kingship, right? In the old traditions of the Celtic and Norse worlds, the true king was elected by the three Norns, the three sisters, not because he was the most powerful man, or, you know, etc. He was chosen because he was a person who could step up, who didn't need anything, well, being worthy, but also more importantly, he didn't need anything from being king. He wasn't becoming king for power, wasn't becoming king for money or land or status. He was coming king really to actually support the queen. The real energy in the old world was always with the feminine, and that was recognized in the king's job. Even though he'd often be the figurehead, the real power would lie with the queen or the woman. And so the king's job was to support that. And I always use this as an example with the mighty oak tree, who really, for me, embodies royalty. And in Britain, we have the two trees. We have the oak and we have the holly. And at the summer solstice, the oak hands over the kingship to the holly, and then at winter solstice, it goes back. But when you see a holly tree, when you see an oak tree out in nature, it has a very clear ring that's its boundary, you know, where the branches and the roots. But what I find interesting about the oak is that not only does it create this very dedicated space for itself, but within that space, there are animals living, there are trees even growing, other trees growing within the oak. And what I understand from this is I have so much because I am what I am, that I don't need to take anything from anybody else. And I have so much in myself that I'm willing to share my space. That to me is much more of a royalty kind of energy. Is I'm not here to take from you, I'm here to support and provide for my people. And whoever is in my space are my people. And so I see that whenever I see the oak tree, I always think that. And I've been blessed enough to meet the spirit of oak many times, and it's royalty. I remember once it came and sat next to me in an ayahuasca ceremony when I needed help, and it was a king. It just came and sat next to me as a royal king, shining bright white light, and I was like, wow, you really are a king. So I like that story because, you know, it makes us think about what power really means, and to be a true leader is not to take power for power's sake, but to take it because you don't need the power.
Well, this, you know, what you were saying just here, and especially that the oak tree creates a space for many creatures, you know, goes to the Characlo theme, whether we say Characlo or Caraclo, you know, conjunct the moon, the moon. And the Sabian symbol for 12 degrees of Aquarius is people on a vast staircase graduated upwards. So this moon, this full moon, with this whole theme of leadership, is holding space for the people. And people are holding the space for the leadership. So there is this, as we're going upwards, as we're raising our vibe, right? As we're, you know, like increasing the love and the nurturing, caring energy that Characlo has as the partner of Chiron. She has her own very exquisite, very, you know, kind of subtle healing energy, who, as she helped, you know, be able to hold the space for Chiron to do his work even when wounded. so there's this holding the space for group energy, for community, that is also going on in this moon in a very strong way. And Chariklo, her name means the spinner. So it's a kind of spinning energy that I think also has to do with the vibrational frequencies. If things vibrate, if they're going, circling, spinning faster, they're going to vibrate and bring in energy in a different way. And I think she has a lot to do with frequency as well.
Just remind me again, Kelley, and for audience, just the energy of Chariklo, who that being is.
Chariklo, well, in the story I came across that I like, she was a river mermaid who fell in love with Chiron, and he with her in the mountain valleys where the river went through. And that in order to be with him, she transformed herself from a mermaid into a centaurus. So instead of half fish, half woman, she became half horse, half woman to be with him. So part of my way of thinking about the theme of Chariklo is whatever form best serves love. And that goes along very well with this, with the fact that she's going to be kind of involved with the Venus retrograde in Leo a bit as well. But this full moon is just being held by her energy. And she was shown as an astronomical object, small as she is, to have a double halo, two very, very thin rings around Chariklo. Astronomers were like, something that small can have rings and a double one. So to me, she has this kind of double halo, around her energy that is the subtle field and the vibrating energy.
Wow. I love the Sabian symbol there, people on a vast staircase graduating upwards. I mean, it's, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise our frequency and upwards.
And we're doing it together.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I can't help but be drawn to the image of Varuna that you put up. Perhaps you can talk us through that and what's going on there.
Yeah, Varuna is at 7 degrees Leo, so conjunct the sun. This is a really interesting that both the sun and the moon on this full moon have a special energy connected to them. And Varuna, we've talked about before as being an ancient Vedic god who oversees universal law and cosmic law. Not unlike Orcus in his own way, but this is on a different level. It's one of the Kuiper Belt objects, and it's about maintaining cosmic law, often also considered to be the ruler over all the waters, which is an interesting point. I live in Vermont, and we just had like a historic flooding, rains. You wouldn't believe the thunder and lightning and the sheets of rain pouring from the sky. So we had a visitation from Varuna here. And so that there's this, this cosmic law. So this is, there's Varuna in the leadership sign, standing for cosmic law and re-engaging cosmic law. So that also is influencing the quality of leadership that we're looking for at this point. That is in divine order, is in, cosmic law, not human law, which can be very faulty and corrupted. This is a universal law energy coming forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? As we wake up as a species, as humanity wakes up, I think that the waking up process is maybe not quite what everybody expected, but we're waking up to the reality of the world that we lived in or have been living in, which is not really what many people thought it was. And I think that maybe divine cosmic law has not really been able to play out properly here on Earth for the last couple of thousand years. But that was also part of the journey that we had to go on. But now I feel that maybe as humanity steps up to be beings of fifth dimensional, non-dual, unconditional love, that divine order can now be restored back to our planet, and that we can all be a sovereign being as part of a sovereign collective, and that we will step up to be galactic citizens or cosmic citizens, how we want to do it. But in order to do that, we need to be in alignment. We can't be venturing out into the universe and replicating maybe what other off-planet beings have been doing here on Earth for a while. And maybe that might sound a little far out to people, but I think that as we progress through the next couple of years, the waking up and ascension process is going to throw up a lot of surprises for a lot of people as the
Yes.
is
Oh, absolutely. We don't have to wait long for that. But, you know, one of the things also is Jupiter is so key in the dynamic of this full moon chart, because it squares the sun and the moon. And it's in Taurus. So when we're talking about cosmic law, you know, earth energy is basic here. And it also is in a exact like 13-degree, almost to the minute alignment with Mars in Virgo, another earth energy sign. What's appropriate in, you know, within earth energy? What can we, you know, like that oak tree has deep roots. You know, what about Jupiter and the deep roots and the steadiness and stability that we can't continue old habits and patterns and be productive and, you know, foster, you know, the goodness and live our lives in a way that has a kind of value that is being questioned by Venus right now. You know, what's going to be sustainable in the long run? And, you know, we're learning a lot about, you know, the basics of life with this Jupiter energy. So it's very pronounced here, Jupiter is. And it also, we have, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, just about the North Node in Taurus, and I've been sort of tracking that over the last sort of year and a half, obviously, the 18 months or so of the process. And I'm like, it feels to me that with the North Node in Taurus, i.e. being sort of collective future, that we were being encouraged to bring things back to the grassroots and to build from the ground up and not to get ahead of ourselves. New Earth is not going to be created overnight. I mean, it can be created overnight somewhat in our minds, but the actual process is going to take a while, mainly because there's a cleanup job that needs to go on, and energetically, we haven't really been able to do that safely until now. And I think that with the nodes about to shift, that the process of getting our foundations set was really, really important. And I know many people who've up sticks, left their jobs, gone and found a piece of land, moved away, and they're creating their sovereign space. And in their own way, by doing that, they're creating a sovereign life for themselves. Okay, I don't own this land maybe, but I'm going to be the guardian of it. This land is also sovereign. And, you know, when I was up in the Highlands of Scotland back in 2021, I had the very distinct impression, anyone's ever been up to the Highlands has said similar things, is that the mountains, the landscape feels sovereign. The mountains spoke to me and they said, we're already in New Earth, we've always been here. And then I realized why there was so much sense of independence from the Scottish people, because they have this sense of sovereignty so strong, because it emanates from the land. And when you go to the Highlands in Scotland, the mountains are touching the sky. It's like, you know, the clouds, it's like the angels are there right on top of the mountains. You can see and feel it. Most incredible energy. And I'd never been before. And I was like, wow, how come I lived in Britain all of this time and never been to the Highlands? So I highly recommend that if you want to experience a sovereign energy coming from the planet, that's one of the places for sure that you can feel it.
Yeah, there's a kind of stature there that is, again, a kind of majesty.
Absolutely.
And it's been the last couple of months, you know, in the last hurrah of the North Node in Taurus, that it's been aligned with Jupiter, because Jupiter's moving forward. And, you know, they were really close the last couple of moon cycles. So, you know, now it has shifted and we are absolutely seeing the nodes in the Aries Libra dynamic. And we're seeing again the highlighting of this particular, you know, without the new moon filling in that fourth corner, we're seeing this very dynamic. Pluto is squaring the nodes like really, really closely. Haumea's right in there. Eris is coming on strong, and the South Node is going to be conjuncting Eris pretty closely on equinox. So this is pretty strong energy. And here's Chiron not far away. And in a nice alignment with his partner Chariklo, which is kind of nice. But also this Chiron healing energy, it's like this is a healing opportunity for us. Can we step up to it? that's part of the challenge of the North Node in Aries. And also Venus will be trining. And so we see the Black Moon trining Chiron, really supporting from fire sign to fire sign that that courage of really taking initiative and doing what you're being called to do, answering that call and stirring up whatever it may be. But there's that, I want to go back to Eris having that Xena undertone. You know, she was quite a feisty lady, and she was a healer and royal and a warrior. So it's the warrior healer. I think you've been mentioning warrior healer energy.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, for me, Achilles is the warrior healer, trained, of course, by Chiron, and that's manifesting in the plant of yarrow. So for me, the very humble plant that you find on the lawn, yarrow, is very much the warrior healer. And I think that when we think about warriorship, people often think it's to do with going to war and killing people. I don't see it that way. I see warrior as a state of being that is resilient, resourceful, tough, can handle all situations, and is sovereign. Is sovereign enough to make decisions.
Spiritual warrior. There's somewhere in the Bible that says, put on your spiritual armor or something. Right, that is, shining with the light of the divine, and that's not always an easy thing to do. But that's how we stand up and be more clear. So that energy is the courage of heart and the support of this, this fire energy, this Venus retrograde, the North Node going into Aries. This is really strong energy coming in here on this full moon. And we just have to hold it. We have to hold it, So, and also,
I was just going to say, just final thoughts. I'm also seeing that Saturn is now in an opposition to Venus, and that Mars has moved on, and Venus and Mars are in a somewhat wide conjunction. You want to say anything about that?
Mercury, isn't that Mercury?
Mercury. Sorry, yes, not Venus. Saturn is
Mercury, and it's what did I do now? Mercury in its own sign. Mercury in its own sign with Saturn. So this is maybe we'll get clearer information during this full moon. And the Venus is squaring Uranus, soon here. So, we've still got Uranus and Taurus kind of changing things up. And if we're looking at that square that happens 3 times, we're looking at basically Uranus and Venus's sign already suggesting shifts in the financial arena. And this Venus retrograde is plugged right into it. And so there's more indication here of changes in the financial, realm, and any new systems that are coming in, any, whatever's going on with that. But it's also the more we are feeling the abundance and richness coming through our lives, through resources, through making connections with people. It's not all about money. It's money is a means to an ends in some way. And what are resources that we can create and develop without having to lean on money? And can we see that richness coming into our lives and having that, match what's going on in the outer world as well?
Right. So some important points then, I think many of us were perhaps looking at the astrology and thinking that the financial change, collapse, however you want to put it, was probably going to occur sometime during the South Node in Scorpio, but then that doesn't look so likely. So I think that maybe this has been an initiation or inception point that is probably going to come, as many other astrologers are now thinking, around the full moon partial eclipse in October on the 28th. Which very much speaks to that. So I'm wondering whether this process now between this moon cycle and those moon cycles coming up into the Scorpio season are going to precipitate the collapse of the financial system. I mean, it's a very strange state of affairs anyway, because many of us know that it's already happened, and yet the optics are not showing that. And it's well, what's going on, So we're very much still in the theatre watching the performance play out. But
that invisible cloak of power, but also Venus, the retrograde itself squaring Uranus, to me, is a very clear astrological indication. Now, Venus is retrograde all the way until September 4th.
Wow.
she's still in Leo. Once she turns forward, she's still in Leo, like halfway through October.
Wow. And so, you know, before we take this down, Kelley, and do our final wrap up, the only other thing I just want to allude to, which you've already said, is that that Pluto is going to be in a very, very tight square now. It's almost exact, right, to the nodes, but the nodes have shifted by this point into the Aries Libra. So that's been one of the weird things about this Pluto square in the nodes, is it's been sort of backwards and forwards, because Pluto was in Aquarius for a bit, then retro back into Capricorn, and then the nodes have been in Taurus and Scorpio, but are now going to shift. So it's been this sort of weird kind of backwards and forwards. And, you know, as I've said before, in the middle of all of that, some of us have been having our nodal reversal returns, which has felt a bit like being turned inside out at various points. So me personally, I'll be quite glad when this nodal thing will shift, but unfortunately it's not going to be until the end of the year. So any final thoughts on that, Kelley, as we finish up for today?
Well, don't forget how Maya and Eris, you know, they're in on this. So
right.
they're going to continue squaring Pluto for a bit here. And especially how Maya, the birthing goddess, you know, and again, it's going to come from the heart. It's got to come from the heart. And it's about balancing and finding that balance and the reciprocity that Libra is about too. And when we have the North Node in Aries and we're being called to be in our center, and if the other person is in their center, then we can have the best of the relationship dynamic. Nobody's, you know, compromising for the other person. Nobody's accommodating. Nobody is, you know, it's a more of a balance, however you find that.
Nobody's
and it goes along with the balance of the head and the heart, not even the head and the heart and the soul.
Yes.
That relationship is absolutely key. And I would like to make that my last major statement.
Well, let's take down the chart and we'll just do our little wrap up, and then that will be it for today. But yeah, I totally agree. You know, I mean, we often talk about the heart and the mind and everything else, but the truth of the matter is the heart's connecting us to our soul, but also our higher self, to our unconditional love self, our non-dual self. And if that's not the journey that we're on, then I don't know what is. You know, I mean, I sometimes scratch my head at how much of the collective is involved in the process, how much of it's just passing people by. And then I wonder about, you know, the people that we connect with and we do these shows with, and where we're all at in the journey. And, you know, I definitely have felt frustration from some quarters over the last couple of months that things were not being allowed to move forward. I had that myself. I'm like, come on, surely we've all suffered enough. Can we not just be given some space and freedom and safety, energetically speaking, to get on with the jobs that we're doing? And it's been challenging to initiate stuff over this last year because some of those unhelpful interfering frequencies.
It hasn't been time.
Right.
You know, except at the magic moments when Chiron aligns the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. Right. So, you know, and Pluto is about, you know, one profound dynamic of transformation in the collective consciousness. And it's not fully in Aquarius yet. Right.
So, of course, Pluto fully moves into Aquarius completely, I think, in sometime in beginning of next year, right? In January?
November of 2024.
Oh, wow. It's that long.
It's back in Capricorn again, and it's like September and October of next year. It's in Aquarius most of the year, but it also goes back just for a couple of months, little cleanup jobs or whatever.
Something like that, right? A few little grommets that didn't get cleaned out of the cupboard, along with a few of the skeletons that may be there for some of these leaders.
I'm cleaning my cupboards.
Well, actually, you know what? Just as a final thought, I just want to share this, but the idea of cleaning house, I think, has been a process that we've been watching on the television. And I think that it's one that we can very much take to heart, of like cleaning my own house, literally my body, cleaning my house, cleaning my workspace, whatever your house is, whether you're a government department, a leader, you know, a leader. I think the idea of cleaning house and removing the things in your house that no longer serve you.
Exactly. The old stuff that bring back old memories. That was me back then, you know, and making space for new energy, you know, new creations and new surroundings that represent the becoming of us, you know?
Yeah. And also allowing ourselves the freedom to change, to shapeshift. It's like, well, 20 years ago, I was a wounded individual. 10 years ago, I was also still a wounded individual, but making some progress. But those are identities that we give ourselves at various points. The victim identity, I think that's one that most of humanity has in some way, because actually it's probably reasonably well founded. I think most of us have been victims of many things, but that identity doesn't really serve us moving forwards. It's keeping us in an old paradigm frequency.
Yes. And that's the Venus retrograde. Leo is the sign of like identify. How am I identifying? What is my role? How am I defining that? And like then there's the who am I part of it. But yeah, like our identity, and a lot of our ego is our self-identity based on early, impressions that created a false sense. And here we are diving deeper for the true soul sense, essence.
Right. And so finally, I think that maybe for many of us, the big questions of our life, who am I and what the hell am I doing here, may start to get answered very soon, because for sure, we're all here for a reason, right? Maybe we're galactic tourists, or maybe we've come to be leaders, maybe we've come to create the new earth, or maybe none of those things. Maybe we're not interested. Who knows? I think that as long as there are as many people on the planet as there are, there's going to be as many different variations of everything. And that's the beauty of the world that we live in, is we have this incredible variety. And in the past, that's been used against us to divide and conquer. But now perhaps we can celebrate our diversity, and we get to choose who do I want to spend time with and who not. And the people that resonate with me and that I can have a level playing field with, I want to hang around. And those people that I maybe can't, okay, I still have unconditional love and compassion for you, brother, sister, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to spend time with you. And
that's a beautiful dynamic with the Leo Aquarius. Like, who am I, and who are the people I want to hang out with and co-create with? And, what is my role in this group? Do I like that? Do I like the feedback I'm getting? I can always, go somewhere else where I'm, can really do my thing and be appreciated.
Well, even just on a simple level, when me and you decided to do this podcast, we made a simple common law agreement. Okay, this is what I can offer. This is what you can offer. Do we agree that this is something that benefits us both and others? Yes. Do we want to do it? Yes. Okay. Maybe
as long as it's fun, we're going to keep doing it.
Exactly. And so I just use that as a very basic example, because every time we enter into an agreement with somebody, we have to make sure that it's equal and opposite and balanced. And we have to get agreements. And I saw this many times as a final thought, as a salesperson, that I observed is sometimes people enter into agreements, not because they're happy, but because they think they have to. Yeah. Whenever I saw those agreements unfold, they always ended in disaster, because one person always felt put out that they hadn't got what they wanted in the deal. I saw this across many, many years in many, many formats. And I'm like, it really stuck with me. And then I started to look into common law. And I was like, yeah, you have to enter into an agreement so that both sides are happy. And if one side isn't, they have to say, that's not quite working for me. Can we negotiate? Yeah, okay, let's see if we can make it so it works for both of us. No, I can't. Okay, not a problem. I'm just going to walk away. No hard feelings towards you, brother. But that's not a deal that works for me. And so I'm going to walk away. If we can have another chat and make a deal that works, great. And, I don't mean deals in business senses. I just mean many kind of contracts.
Oh, business senses too.
Yeah, and business senses too, of course. But we can also be talking about marriages, partnerships, relations, anything, right? Even just an agreement, hey, do you agree to take me to the supermarket tomorrow because it's going to benefit and I'll cook you dinner? Is that a good deal? Sure, why not? Simple things, but we can play around with this and get into the mindset of thinking like this. It's like I'm entering into some sort of contract, even if it's just to make dinner in return for doing the washing or whatever. Is that a contract I'm okay with? Yeah, it is. I like cooking and I don't like washing up, whatever. I'm just playing around with this. But I just wanted that as a final thought. So Kelley, as always, an absolute delight to do this show. Where can people find out about what you're doing? And do you have anything else you wish to share at this point?
Oh, well, let me just say, my website, heliostar.com, is still a good place to go, but I'm now on Substack as Star Lady. I think Star Lady. I have to go back, but it's anyway. I'm on, which means I'm going to be. It's going to be easier for me to post things at short notice and do more audio. And so you might look for me on Substack. I think it's a good community. I really like the quality of a lot of the writers there. And so I think that's going to inspire me and be a good place to find me.
Good. Well, look, if you can provide me with the links for those, we'll put those in the show notes so that people can start to link with you there. And, you know, as always, Kelley, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. And as I always say, I learned so much from these Moons and Mythos shows. And also, for those of you that do want to fully engage with the heart, please do check out the quest to the quantum heart over at quantumplanthealing.com that me and Kelley talked about at the beginning. This is going to be a wonderful 3-week journey working with lots of amazing heart medicines to do all of the things that me and Kelley have just been talking about. Really is to elevate ourselves, to be those people graduating up the staircase to a different level of consciousness that is going to allow us to really go into the dream space of our heart, which is really the imagination of our higher self, who holds the blueprint for who we are and why we're here. So, you know, it's in the end, it's all perfect, as Dandelion always says, and it's always divine. So I think that's a beautiful place to finish. Thank you, Kelley. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you all again very soon. Take it easy. Keep it rainbow. Ciao for now.